Okay, so this review here, this government review, it's about capitalism, a fair form of capitalism, in the mindset that I think of, and I think about liberty and justice for all. Capitalism you know, for everybody, not just for certain class groups or those who are connected. Because a lot of people have a problem with capitalism, and I'm like, the problem is not capitalism, it's corruption. It's the government being corrupt in certain ways. Um, the problems that I see with capitalism, anyways, are just really due to corruption yeah, that's really what it is. um, so this review here is going to talk about criminal justice reform, human rights, the gun debate, sex work and drugs, reparations, welfare reform, housing ideas, healthcare, education, and the notion of having a more cohesive, efficient, simplified government, local, state, and the federal levels. Thanks for tuning in. So I sort of feel that in our government today, one of the main issues is collectively with local, state, and federal, things are overdone. There's a lot of redundancy or it's the structure and function that could be better, I think. The larger goal that I would have would be to eliminate federal income tax and other forms of tax, which if you really think about it, it's kind of unfair, like inheritance tax. It doesn't matter what your income is. You could be lower class or middle class, and what do you think you should have to pay? Your parents already paid, or whoever would be you getting the money from, they already paid taxes their whole life on that amount of money. And if someone wants to hand something down to their kids, that's just a shame that they're going to tax that away from the children. And that to me is just a crying shame. I feel we could run this government efficiently off of sales and property tax as the mainstays. If we really just got things to where we would want them to be. Elected officials, as far as a better cohesive government picture, we have mayors, county representatives, U.S. state senators, the governor and lieutenant governor, the vice president and president, and sort of get rid of the rest. Why do we need anything else? If you listen to what I just said there, those key elected characters, they cover all the bases of representation. That it's almost like all these other positions that are put in place, the House of Representatives is a big one, they clog things up. These other things that we don't really need. Again, mayors, county representatives, U.S. state senators, governor and lieutenant governor, vice president and president. The checks and balances are found in the hierarchy of clear, straightforward representation. So, as far as sales tax, I have an ideation of how we could split that between the local, the state, and the federal. And, I mean, I do see a path where we could eventually eliminate state income tax. But for starters, I would say I'm calling for elimination of federal income tax and getting this thing tuned up. And then it's almost like, depending on how efficient your state is, would depend on whether or not you have state income tax. But, like, there's really no need to have federal income tax if we really get things tuned up properly. So that's that, and that's just a simple example that's of some ideas of how to better streamline and make things more efficient, direct representation for the people. Okay, education. So for K through 12 education, I feel we need to do away with school choice and charter school, that type of business, and I say the word business, altogether. It makes things too inefficient. Instead, I feel all schools should have and be of a basic level, basic standard that we have. Say this is like the minimum that we're going to tolerate for these tax-funded schools. It just seems ridiculous that it's almost like when you do that whole charter school choice thing, it's almost like you're almost making it like a private school, and it just costs the taxpayer so much more money that it just doesn't make sense on levels. Um, I would base the general national model on the K through 12 school I went to, minus the corporal punishment regimen. I mean, it's kind of almost like a setup that I was sent to that school. They wanted me to speak to that, obviously. Here I am speaking to that. That was one of the most horrible times of my childhood, and I can't believe that they would make it such a sexually tied thing, your private part, your erogenous zone, and they're threatening you as a child. So anyways, that needs to go. That's obviously still in place in schools, and that needs to get the hell out of there. I'd employ teachers' aides, and I would, also call out for volunteers for other actions. In other words, I feel that the use of teachers' aides and, volunteers, believe it or not, there would be a lot of people who are retired or what have you who may wish to lend a hand and volunteer in these school programs, and we can keep the cost down and run things efficiently. I feel school should run from, I would just keep it even. I would have the kids off June, July, August, and then you go from September up to, the end of May. Real simple. And the teachers, it's a great job, really, if you think about it. You have off those summer months, and, you get paid, so anyways. And I know different states and different school districts have different payouts, what they pay their teachers. A lot of them, vary. You talk about that and debate what should be the minimum. Again, you have off in the summer, so we have to take that into account. Some people complain, say they should not to pay taxes to go towards other people's children's school, towards K through 12 school, as they think people with kids should pay their own way. I feel it's one of the things that I would like to foster the idea that the people have, that it is something that we should support. We do want that basic level of education. I know there's a lot of people wanting to call for free college. I stop on a dime there and I say no, I don't agree with that. I do agree this K through 12 we should be funding, and that's where I kind of stop at this point with the taxpayers' dollars. It's a basic level education, something that we're bring people up to that level, and that's something great for society. I do feel we should promote more trade schools, like vocational education. A lot of I'm familiar with the one in my area. I had a relative who was an educator there for a spell, and they have heating and air conditioning. They have construction services, landscaping, other types of things that they would have that you would be able to learn through those vocational schools. So when the kid gets into 9th or 10th grade, and then they say, hey, part of the day you're going over there or whatever, and it's a great thing for people who want to go into that direction in life. The case against free college for all. Okay, moving on to college here. The case against free college for all is sort of multifaceted. If they said no drugs and alcohol and they were going to test for that, well, that may be one thing. You could look at the beer receipts in any college town on a given Tuesday, or the weekends or whatever, and you'd see, look at all this money that people are spending on beer, and, in the black market, cannabis, you wouldn't have the records for them. The point is, if people have money for beer, kids have money, I don't think we need to be talking about free college, right? So, unless you are going to change the beer culture, which I don't think, none of these politicians who speak about free college for all are not at all changing the beer culture. So unless you say to me, well, these kids they're the non-drinkers. We're only going to pay for the non-drinker. They're no longer drinking, Neil. We changed the cultural mindset. I said, then let's talk. But until then, half the people are drunk halfway through college. Everybody knows that. These politicians are out of touch with reality when they're talking about paying for education. Solutions to make colleges more affordable. The cost of a general four-year college has inflated more than other sectors over the past 20 years, and so I'd investigate that. There's possible waste and other fringe programs which only benefit a minority group of people or something like that, or they're spending too much on these grad programs or research studies. I don't know what they're doing, but something has changed. The price has gone up a lot in the past however many years. Now, if there is a demand for college, maybe we need more colleges, branch campuses, to bring the cost down. And where some cases, kids who still reside at their parents' home and be able to have a more efficient, cost-effective college education. I do understand the notion of living in the dorms and the fun experience that one can have, and it is an experience and a life-building thing, so I do feel that we can make efficient, affordable dorm room living situations with, mess hall cafeterias, and we can do that, I feel, in affordable fashions. Consider this. Consider interest-free loans that colleges do in-house, or payment plans, if you will. So the colleges just set these up, interest-free, and you have, maybe you have your whole life to pay it back, let's say. So say I sign up, I go to college for 4 years, and I sign up, maybe it costs me $40,000. If I go in and I have a viable major where there actually are jobs, I should be able to pay that off when I get out and get a salary job, and I pay that off in 5 to 10 years. Or else, what's the point in going to college? I could have went into plumbing or some other line of work. Could have went down to work at the warehouse making $30,000 a year, and saved to buy a home or whatever, instead of wasting my money on college. So people have to think about, what major are you going into? Is there a viable job market? I know a lot of people who came from working class families, nurses, construction workers, landscapers, and they were able to budget things and put their kids through college. So a lot of times I think it is about budgeting. Takes hard work and sacrifice sometimes when you're raising a family. Both my parents were working class, and they retired off, paid off a home, put the kids that wanted to go to college through college. I think maybe sometimes we need to teach people how to budget more, and spend more efficiently, instead of paying for those high-priced sneakers and the latest smartphones or cable TV and other things that are not needs. Going out to eat all the time, maybe we need to show people how to eat at home more affordably. I don't know. I'm just throwing these things out there because budgeting, responsible spending. Maybe we should have those classes in high school. Need to advise people about the sectors where there are jobs, where you can get out and get a job and have a viable direction in that. Some of the majors are more suited, maybe to folks who just have the extra money. They want to go further their education. They're just doing art history or philosophy or something like that, where there's no jobs. It's like, well, maybe if you have a trust fund or something to live off of, maybe you can go into those majors. But if you need to pay your loans and pay for your life, maybe you need to think about that, and maybe we need to just foster that idea. You can always come back later and take other courses in your life whenever you get to a certain point. So that's just something to think about. Where are the job markets? I know truck drivers, plumbers, warehouse workers who are doing better financially than some people who went to college. So just for perspective, there are other options beside college. So again, when these politicians speak about free college or paying off and eliminating college debt, I think that's a problem. I feel like if you're going to give money out, you need to give money out to everybody. If you want to give everybody $10,000, then give everybody $10,000. Don't say you're just going to give it to these kids who have these loans. A lot of times these people who go to college, and not everybody is this stereotype that I'm about to tell you, but some of them thumb their nose or spit upon the janitors and the construction workers and the working class people of the world, because they go off to college and they're all snobbish. Not all of them, but there's a certain group of them. So how does that feel, that the government is going to pay for these kids' loans while they're spitting upon the janitors of the world? I'm just using that in perspective. So If you're going to give the tax dollars money out to people, you need to do that fairly. Not everybody chooses to go to college. That's like a certain avenue that some do. So other people choose other things. So anyways, it's just some thoughts there. Hope in a better world. Hope and peace. So, guns. Guns, that's a hot topic, right? So my advice, these would be some first steps in gun policy reform. We want to keep what the people expect in the right to bear arms. In the larger sense, I think, is what the majority would want. But I think what we need to do is we need to delineate public and private property rights and expectations. In other words, the expectation that you would have in public property, I don't think the majority wants people walking around in public with assault rifles. I mean, unless we're out going after vigilantes or something, and it's some rare time. But in a general sense, you don't. So again, what's the expectation on public property versus what's your private property right? Kind of the right to bear arms at large, I think, in the Bill of Rights was more so intended for the man to defend himself at home. It wasn't meant to like go around stalking with your assault rifle in public. Again, unless it's like you're putting together a militia to go after a valid, threat to benefit the greater society says, yes, we appreciate that militia. So, again, the first step would be to more carefully delineate public property expectations and private property rights. Number two, I would make these are just my points of advice. I would suggest making all firearm purchases 21 plus. I mean, if we're saying the age of adulthood is 21, what's the reasoning behind having any purchase going to someone less than that age? Number three, for the purchase, a clear universal background check for purchase and exchange. Now, the problem we have today is that a lot of the state's systems are not correlated. So there's like loopholes. I know from other aspects that's true. So I'm bringing it up here. We got to get kind of all the states working on the same computer program, so to speak, so that all the background checks from all the counties of every state is all in one standardized system. For discussion further, we can talk about what is the amendment, the right to bear arms. On some levels, it's arbitrary. Citizens have the right to defend themselves where justified and to protect other Bill of Rights. That's kind of the general idea behind it. Individual states in the USA can decide maybe, if we further break this down, if the majority wants to allow assault rifles or rocket launchers, or if they want automatic handguns or conceal and carry. I don't know if there would ever be a state which would build a majority where they would say, we don't want any guns for private citizens. We want to trust the police. Now, when gun owners pass through states that receive federal funding, states which may ban certain types of guns, we need to have clear and reasonable transport laws, like in the trunk or a lockbox or something like that. Because if you're saying that there's states that are taking federal funding, you have to abide by the general national standard of the right of a person to have those firearms, so to speak. So when I propose this notion about different states deciding things, I'm talking about a voluntary segregation that, may allow, that may be what allows gun culture to have that freedom at the same time is not breaking our nation apart too much. And then the people who don't want, like, guns floating around, we can maybe segregate ourselves to these people go over there, these people go over there, where the gun people and the non-gun people in general, I'd like to live in a society where I can trust the police, where we say we have a trusted police force and we don't feel the need to have guns because we have everything wrapped up in a proper functioning police department. So that's just a thought on that matter. Some would speak about the right to bear arms. I wrap these loving arms around you, brothers in arms. So, just some thoughts on the matter. We got to really discuss it out and delineate it, because there's, if there's still going to be, I don't know. The media is kind of, we hear about these mass shootings, and then we don't hear about it. So it's like, it's unclear what's going on. I mean, sometimes the media will, you don't know. It's like, it's very odd. It comes in cycles. Maybe that's just the way it is as far as those things. But, so anyways, that's just some little points on guns and some thoughts on guns. Hope in a better society. Healthcare. Okay, so today I do not control the majority of the corporations out there. However, if I did, one of my aims would, or not necessarily the majority. Imagine you controlled all the corporations, like they all came under one hood, and you controlled them all. I would aim to shave profits off the top of each corporation and privately subsidize a worldwide healthcare organization system. Corporate responsibility. Many of the goods that are sold and the practices of industry have, that led to environmental degradation, also led to health degradation in many cases. The products themselves sometimes have chemicals in them that are deleterious to the human body. I would consider state-of-the-art full body scans and blood analysis. There's no reason why to have these little blood labs where you're doing this and this and this separate. Just do a full analysis. The idea would be to subsidize it down so that the cost of a broken arm would be like $150 to $200 instead of the thousands that it is today. Okay, I don't control the corporations, and so back to current day reality. For starters, I suggest what the Republicans did some years back, where they said, let's allow insurance to be sold across state lines, with the idea that, larger pools of this could bring the cost down. So that's one measure or angle that I would speak about here today. They used to have other types of insurance programs where, like, if I just wanted, like, if I accidental insurance, like if I break an arm or break a bone or whatever you want to call it, they had that, which may not cover things like extended cancer treatment or your colon issues, but things like concussions or a broken leg or stitches, etc., would be covered. And so you could have more options for people to buy into those plans. Those plans seem to be hard to come by. At least I've tried to find them, and they seem to be off the menu. Some people may choose just to die off rather than take, like, chemotherapy, cancer treatments anyways, or what have you. Or some people, they change their diet, or they do other means if they have something catastrophic like that. So it may not be something that they want. And so I believe a variety, rather than having like a one-size-fits-all insurance program, you could have more of a variety for people who, like I said, maybe want just the accidental type insurance. So I would want to remove any restrictions or regulations that prevent insurance companies from diversifying. This is just another general question where people are saying they want to speak about, pre-existing conditions or this and that. This is just a question. Should someone who has health complications resulting from drinking and smoking and eating greasy bacon their whole life, should they pay the same insurance premium as one who abstained from those more quote-unquote dangerous to the body activities? So I feel it's important to continue to stress exercise and a healthy diet in order to curb many deleterious health conditions. Prevention is key in that sense. At the end of the day, when we're speaking about insurance is only going to be based on what the actual cost of healthcare is. Removing some of the middlemen may lead to lower costs. Like today, there's a lot of investors who have their hand in the pocket or in the pie or whatever, and they're pulling out, and so pulling out what they're pulling out, that's going to cause the cost of healthcare and thus insurance to go up. So insurance is only based on the cost of healthcare. If you make your healthcare systems more efficient, more straightforward, more clear, and it's not as quote-unquote for profit, well, then you can bring the cost down. You can bring the cost accordingly of the insurance plans that cater to that healthcare system down. So focusing on insurance as a primary, as some of these politicians have, is ridiculous. You need to go to the core, and that's the healthcare facilities, the practices and procedures as a primary. Or else you're not going at the core target area. You're trying to target these insurance companies who have nothing to do with their premiums are based on the actual healthcare. So anyways, these are just some general thoughts on healthcare, just some ideas just to put out there. Thanks for listening on that. Okay, housing ideas. These are some housing solutions where I speak about private capital being used to solve the crisis, as well as minimal government welfare allocations, as today there are some, which I'll touch on here, the problems that I see with current day allocations. There is the definite need for affordable housing options in some locales, if we wish to, have businesses carry on smoothly, and to stave off any of these over-socialistic or communistic, even speaking people's notions that they have of out there. People want to give free housing and or just put rent control in place on private citizens, private property. I mean, I don't think that that's fair at all. Like, if I was going to touch on that a little later, but I might as well bring it up right now. If you're going to say that you think rent control is fair, then why not put like a cap on like what the plumber is earning, or what the teacher is earning, or what the doctor is earning? That's what it's like saying these people went out, they have investments in real estate, and people pay for that just like they pay for water or for anything. Are you putting a cap on water? I mean, are you putting a cap on healthcare? Meaning these are all for-profit things in our society. Plumbing, that's a necessity, right? So when you go around and start boasting rent control, that's like unfair. You're being unfair to a certain class of people, and it's unfair. So today, here's the whole logical thing: the struggling $15 an hour wage earner in New York City or Los Angeles or many other locales cannot afford adequate housing on that, let's say that, on that $15 an hour wage. Now they do today, this is what I want to make a major point on, people do have the vast opportunity to move from those expensive places like New York City, and they could move up to Albany or other, I'm just using that as an example, could be other, move over to Michigan in some areas. There's tons of other cities where the price of housing actually is down. And there are jobs, so you could actually, someone who's been struggling in New York City could move over to, I'm just picking a place, somewhere in Michigan, Battle Creek, Michigan, or, other areas where you could get a job making the same wage, but you'd be able to get a mortgage on a home, whereas you would never be able to get a mortgage in New York City on that wage. So that's just something for people to think about. So to do this, to see what lines up with your situation, you can do a statewide search on Zillow, and you can see where all the affordable housing options are as far as purchase. And you can also then cross-reference with Indeed.com. So Zillow.com and Indeed.com is what I suggest people can use to say, okay, where are these houses that I could get, a mortgage on my wage, and what other places have jobs for my wage if I'm going to move to go make that similar wage. The one thing we need to deal with is crime. I mean, this is why I would always boast being hard on violent crime and thefty crime. There are some excuses that people have why they don't want to move is because they're afraid of crime. Now, you can't use that excuse if you're living in Los Angeles or New York City, because they're probably two of the higher crime filled places. So you can't say, oh, I'm afraid to move to wherever because of crime. I'm like, well, you're living in New York City and Los Angeles where there's all kinds of crime. So, I mean, according to the statistics that I've seen. So, anyways, private capital. Moving on here. Private capital. Building efficient, affordable housing. Outskirts of cities and towns. Be it of high rises with small, square footage units or small single family homes for that particular class of people. This can be done while someone who has a private capital can come in and do this and still make profit, or they could break even and just kind of want to do it as a good deed. Now, I'm talking about mass producing this stuff so that there's so much of it that you like flood the market with this class of housing. And we could talk about rentals as well as for purchase for this, class of housing. Now, what this would also do is we'd have a vast construction boom. Think about it. This would actually boost the economy in so many ways, because the private capital people who would be doing this for like a good deed. You come in, you'd be supporting carpenters, plumbers, electricians, suppliers, etc. So the economy would be booming. We'd have the affordable housing. We'd be flowing along like the good old days, right? Also, we can consider high-speed transit, places that go into places like New York City and Los Angeles from afar. So if you're out in some outlying areas and we make this can be done in conjunction with the local governments, state governments, and even federal funding, I guess, would go into that, to make these high-speed transit routes so that we can build more affordable housing. I mean, there's only a limited amount of space in Los Angeles, right? In the city areas. I mean, there are in Los Angeles County, if you go out further, there's a lot more open land. Now you got consider how people are going to get there efficiently, as well as water woes in places like Los Angeles. Now, if you're dealing with New York City in the outlying areas, maybe you're not going to have to be concerned about water as much, but you still need the transit for people to get in efficiently. So for the homeless population, this is something I've talked about for a while now. A national campground plan on the outskirts of cities with bus routes in from these remote areas. It could also be done in farming communities for some, where people could work doing farming or what have you. I have an entire write-up on this in another place, but I'm not talking about doing this in someone's backyard. I'm talking about carefully selecting these areas on the outskirts of like the, warmer climate zone cities of our country, so the lower states, if you will. Tax dollars being used for homeless vets in particular. I do suggest this idea of skyscrapers full of dorm rooms, or tiny home developments, with sort of community mess halls for the meals and what have you. We can keep costs down through efficient planning and implementation of this. And it's kind of like, how do you want to treat your veterans? I mean, I'm just thinking about the people who are homeless, who a certain particular class. I mean, you could do that for all homeless, but then you don't want to do that in high dollar zip codes, because if you start making like free housing, like just even like a dorm room style place in New York City, where you're going to get all kinds of younger people like, oh, I'll just go live there, I can get free housing. And then so you can have people who maybe normally would go out and make it on their own sort of fall onto that because you're like providing it for them. So that's just something to think about when you're designing these things. And it's just like the people who are either injured or there's something up with them why they don't want to work. It's almost like you don't want to make those things in like high dollar zip codes. You want to go out somewhere where the land is not so expensive, so to speak, or where the area is not so desirable. Because again, you're going to encourage more people. It's like, oh, I can get free housing there. I'm just going to go live in New York City or Los Angeles, and they're going to provide free housing for me. What a day! Woo! So here's the idea for say no to rent control. It should not be the burden of landlords or the taxpayers, for that matter. If no one wants to work at Target or Amazon or Starbucks or the car wash in New York City or Los Angeles because they cannot find affordable housing, my comment is, well, that should be on the burden of Target, Amazon, Starbucks, or the car wash. And, I would just encourage people not to work at those places unless, maybe Amazon and Target, have to, and Starbucks or whoever, maybe they have to start providing housing and say, this is our corporate housing that we provide. Or maybe they're going to have to pay their employees more in those zones to be able to, so they can cover the housing. So again, I don't think it should be the burden of the private landlords. So all these people boasting rent control, you're going after the wrong individual. So to consider the elderly, or other people who are down on their luck, or the disabled citizen who perhaps maybe needs affordable dorm-style living arrangement. I consider, again, the huge projects of that nature, whether it's skyscrapers full of dorm rooms or other development opportunities. But we can make efficient, low-cost projects. And again, this can be done, I believe, with a combination of both private and government money. So anyways, hope in a better day, and I hope in a better housing situation for all. We need a national moratorium on involuntary forms of drugging and electroshocking, the psychiatry procedures that states do to people. Body cavity searches. What's the reason for that? What are they looking for? Some gun up someone's part? Come on. That's nowadays they have full body scanners and all that stuff. To be doing that to someone in the modern age, is even in any age, but today especially, is a very gross violation of someone. Body cavity searches. That's disgusting. Death penalty is something, when we have high security prisons, what's the reason why you're doing the death penalty on someone? What if the person's innocent? Are you going to rest okay knowing that you put an innocent person to death? Child beating, spanking, paddling at tax-funded schools. It's very embarrassing and to think about and have to talk about. Corporal punishment, a private part in erogenous zone. It should not be happening. It's horrible. We need to liberate people who are labeled as criminals when in fact there is no victim. If there's no victim, there's no crime. Examples of that include gambling, sex work, drugs, things that are consensual between adults where there's no victim. All those things cause displacement to many, not just the ones who you're doing it to, but I believe the ones who are even doing it would find in time that they would find themselves displaced, like the police officers and the prison wardens and the politicians who support that stuff would find themselves displaced because they are wronging someone else, and a cause and effect the relationship. You'd see that in time. That's just all theoretical, of course. Moving forward, I feel we need to make the real crimes are very strict. We have all these years been going after people for things that should not be crimes. Sexual rape between people, I would make life in prison, with the option of the rapist to choose doctor-assisted suicide in lieu of prison. To choose that, I believe anybody who goes to prison for life, especially, should have the right to choose, some doctor-assisted suicide rather than sit there in prison. It would save the taxpayers dollars, and if, what I'm saying, like, for whatever reason, if I don't know what to tell you, but that's just my take on it. It's kind of common sense on some levels. Here's a few simple, responsible keys to ending the war on drugs. Delineate, to end the war on drugs responsibly. Delineate private property rights and public property expectations for safety. So here's what we do. We create a national list of adult substances, make clear corruption of minor laws. Victimizing the minor is what would be a crime, not the drug. We create anti-public use or exchange or transfer laws in public to the degree that people must do that on private property. If local governments wish to waive this for cultural custom, for example, say in Northern California, it's a big cannabis consuming community, and they want to have a local park that's funded with local funds where people can go and consume marijuana. That would be one thing that a local, but the thing we wouldn't want to waive is when we say this is corruption of minor. That should be a national thing where we all agree, right? We say, well, hey, we don't want minors to be corrupted with these adult substances. One thing we do need is a simple, reasonable transport law. If I want to take my alcohol or drugs to my brother's beach house for the weekend, there needs to be a provision for that. A simple idea is in the trunk. We want to teach the kids to wait till they're adults, and that's part of the whole corruption of minor things before they try these adult substances. Just tell them the truth. Tell them all kinds of other secrets that the government has been hiding. Give them something more to live for in the process, where hopefully we can be wiser and people aren't going to get into drugs because they have a much wiser perception or view on life. For sex work, again, make clear national corruption of minor laws. All soliciting must be done on private property, no public soliciting, as that ties into number one above what I mentioned about make clear corruption of minor laws, because it has to do with obscenity notions and ordinances and laws. We have to iron out the details with internet sex work and sales, but in public there's children, so that's part of the reason why we wouldn't want public soliciting going on. And just like you're not allowed to go just set up a peanut stand on the corner, you have to have permits for all that and everything anyways. Before any actual sex work happens, the sex worker should be required to check the ID, just as we expect liquor dealers to do. Nowadays, we have card swipers that attach to smartphones, and so we can easily check IDs in that manner. Keep it consensual between adults on private property behind closed doors. Already mentioned this, but the practice of looking up people's private parts, I mentioned body cavity searches, but just looking up people's private parts for admission to prison and stuff like that needs to change. That's a severe violation of an individual. We have full body scanners. If there's any concern, let's employ these full body scanners. That you're going to find something more high tech than, with a high tech piece of equipment like that, than looking up someone's private part, where a lot of times you miss things, or it's in the hair weave or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, a full body scanner is going to find something a lot better. So I think I might stop this here today, and then resume the next time with the next segment that sort of ties into this. Hope in a better world. People who do go to prison for real crimes, we should have specific in-depth courses at prisons as part of the reformation of the prisoner. Courses that are specific to the crime they commit. If someone does criminal trespassing, they have courses on that. If someone does theft, courses on that. Assaults, courses on that, etc. For nonviolent theft, for the first offense, I feel it should be a fine. Think about it, it's just a monetary issue. The first offense, have them pay back the victim for the value of the theft. After the first offense, I think we need to say, maybe they need to sit some time out in prison and go to coursework on that. They can still do coursework on probation or something in addition to paying back the fine for the first offense. Sexual rape and murder, as I already mentioned, should be life in prison with the option of doctor-assisted suicide. There's no excuse for that. I feel for people who maintain innocence, we should have clear, straightforward options for them to make the appeals while incarcerated. It should be, if someone is maintaining innocence, give them the options while they're incarcerated to make the appeals and make the case and prove, like, hey, I'm innocent, I'm falsely accused. So we need to have resources available for those individuals. Just put yourself in the shoes and say you are innocent and you're falsely accused. You would want those resources. Police and fire. A better way to deal with that is to nationalize the organization structure, the emergency service operations, make things more efficient and secure all around, standard. Nationally integrated system of state police with local branch stations. So instead of having like these local city or local town offices, imagine they're branch stations of the main state police office. Same with fire. For violent crimes, I don't think there should be any bail set. Why would we set bail for, violent crimes or threats thereof? Rather, we should have a speedy public trial with the option of, extended time if someone needs to make the case and they need, more time within reason. This is an idea of a draft copy for the Child Protection Amendment, okay? To the Constitutional Bill of Rights. The touching or hitting of children's private parts for purposes of punishment shall be prohibited. Children being defined as those under the age of 18, otherwise known as minors. Private parts here defined: for the males, the penis and the buttocks. For the females, the vagina, the buttocks, and the breast. U.S. Constitution, I feel that should be the ideation. People want to change the wording on that, but that's the notion. It's disgusting to think about that they're hitting children on private parts for punishment. Hope in a better day. Okay, reparations. This is my general reparation plan, then I'll get into the justifications behind this. The general reparation plan. For classism, every American citizen gets $10,000. For racism, non-white, non-Caucasians get an additional $10,000. For sexism, women get an additional $10,000. So, for example, if you're a white woman, you're going to get $20K. If you're a white man, you'll just get $10K. If you're a black woman or Latino woman, you'll end up getting $30K. Again, classism, racism, sexism. Other case-specific plans for people who were attacked wrongly by the government: involuntary psychiatry, which has been compared to the likes of what Nazi Germany has done to people. Survivors of the Holocaust compared that. The war on drugs and sex work or gambling in cases where it was consensual between adults, where there was no victim. You're basically going after people for no good reason. If there's no victim, there's no crime. Corporal punishment, going after people's private parts, the erogenous zone, private part. That happened at tax-funded institutions. Tax-funded institutions that did this to people. Of course, the black man or any other man, in some cases, who was wrongly beat down by the police for no good reason. We'll have to hear specific cases and make the cases. People who had to flee the United States to avoid the draft, or those imprisoned for, saying, I'm not going to fight in your war, you can't force me to fight. That's disgusting that a nation would ever try to force somebody into the army. That's disgusting. That's evil. There's the people like the American Japanese who were placed in detainment camps for no good reason. There's the Native American Indians, who God knows they were tragically pushed around all over the place. So we need to do something significant to help groups of people. There are more examples. Those are just some of the main ones under the reparation category. So due to all the abuses the government did to people over the years against the larger groups as a result of policy, in addition to specific individuals, this is why we come to the general reparation plan of classism, racism, sexism. Classism is just, I use this as an example, and it's a perfect example because it's happening in the States today. We can talk about cannabis, we can talk about communications, we can talk about liquor regulations. The way they run those things, if you know how they run the cannabis industries and all these little mafia states that are doing it, or the communications or the liquor regulations, it's like a mafia. They're letting like certain people in it and then not other people. It's like, okay, we're going to let so-and-so and so-and-so do it and not so-and-so and so-and-so. And I rope that in with classism because that's really what it is. It's like who you know and who you la. So classism. And it's like, who's rubbing shoulders with whoever. And that's how you end up a lot of times through the years. You look at it, you look at the policy and you see what's going on. So if we look at government policy of the past 100 years, I can prove the validity for the general classism, racism, and sexism reparations. Bring in the accountants and mathematicians as far as figuring out a clear way to gain the money needed to do this in a fast and efficient enough manner to do it, ASAP. I was thinking fossil fuel tax in these dark burning times could also just add the amount. I mean, we seem to always be adding stuff to the national debt, but if this is just a one and done plan, as I propose, inflation will be kept minimal. We do not want to get in the habit of just printing money and adding debt like they do, with stimulus things. It can lead to more serious inflation over time. I look at this general reparation plan as like a Kickstarter reboot for those who were not given a fair shake. We hope that people would use the money wisely and they don't blow it, and it can really help people get out of the hole that they might have been stuck in, especially many disparaged groups. Hope in great peace, hope in a better society. Today's welfare programs really need to be restructured, trimmed. We have to ask, is it justified? Are the people who are taking welfare being honest to those who are being taxed and or paying for it? In general, today I support giving efficient affordable housing with a cafeteria and health services, rather than free money handouts. So today they're doing a lot of this Section 8 stuff and other things where they're giving, I don't know, it just seems like it would be better, rather than giving the money out, to provide the actual functional needs, the housing, the food, the health services. Well, putting up people today in expensive zip codes, places that hardworking citizens can sometimes not even afford to live in. So we have to ask, is that fair? We could house way more people for the same tax dollar in other less expensive zip codes. A lot more can be said about welfare reform across the board, but I just wanted to throw a couple points out on that. Okay, so the voting system. Here's an idea. If each citizen had an account connected with their social security number, where we could vote and we could change our vote anytime up until the election day cutoff time, we could count and recount the votes a heck of a lot easier, right? With a push of a button, you could retally the votes. And if there was ever any concern about fraud, you could ask people to check in and say, hey, is your vote what you voted for? And they log in and they see, oh yeah, that's what I voted for. Most would likely be able to vote from their home, on their computers or their phones, whereas others who do not have such internet access, if you will, could go to the library, or we could have computers still set up at the polling stations. It would just be very simple. It would save money. We don't need extra type equipment. Instead of having all kinds of other infrastructure, it's a standard computer. It's just you log into the site, a government secure site, where you have like an account and a profile, if you will, and it's all designated and it's connected with your social security number. There is no chance of there's limited chance of voter fraud with this system. Again, it's traceable. Today, with all the paper ballots, it's hard to trace things, but if you do it on the computer, we have a computer digital tracking system to be able to trace and track and delineate any kind of potential shenanigans. So, also, this would likely get many, many, many more people voting. Likely, due to the ease of it. You can just do it from home on your computer or on your phone. And again, this is, I don't know, this is just something that in this age where we have everything else, our bank accounts and everything else is online with the push of a button, why would we be so archaic with our voting systems? And again, if there's ever any concern or problem, you can just ask, hey, check into your account. Is what's noted there your vote? Because some people would say, oh, well, hackers could get in and fraudulently do this or that. And I say, well, I see more evidence that there could be paper ballot fraud than someone hacking. Because again, what I mentioned about there's a digital trail. We can trace and track, and we can ask people, hey, log in, make sure your vote is what your vote, who you voted for. And with the push of a button, we can retally it. This same system could also be used to replace the census, in that each person who is born is issued a social security number and an account, and then when they die, a notation is made on that matter that they passed away, and it'd be much easier, much more efficient and accurate than the current day census, the way that they try to run the census system, and it would save the taxpayers money. At the end of the day, do we want to pay more or pay less? And do we want to get a better count or a not so valid count? So I don't know why, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to say, yeah, when someone's born, we give them a social security number, and someone dies, we make a notation that that person passed away. I mean, it's not like it's not rocket science. I don't know why, again, a lot of these government systems are so archaic. The way we run things is so archaic. And it's almost like it's built for corruption. The current day government structure and function, it's built for inefficiency and it's built for corruption. And it goes along with politicians receiving lavish salaries that are far beyond most average Americans' salary. You know what I'm saying? So, anyways, just for perspective, let's put it out there. Hope and great peace. So thank you for tuning in. I try to talk about liberty and justice for all, as well as running things more efficiently and fairly in a capitalistic society, and that's what the thought is behind a lot of these motions that I presented here. I thank you for your time, and hope in a better society. Hope in great peace.